Previous basket is under review.
I'm confident that members of the Basket Under Review family could find a way to make just about anything about college basketball. And I say that as a compliment. I know there was a great piece we had about World Cup teams and their college, their college parallels, if you will. I think we could probably do this with just about any sport. But we are going to keep it in the basketball realm today, Fawcett. But we wanted to, I think, the NBA finals were incredible. The NBA playoffs in general were incredible. I think for a lot of college basketball junkies, including the people that watch our content religiously, we don't get a chance to watch a ton of the NBA in the regular season. And the NBA regular season is very different from the playoffs in a lot of ways. And so you come around every April, May, and June. And I feel like I always learn a lot about kind of where the game is headed, how teams are playing, and, particularly with the way that the Knicks won it and the success that they had. Thought it would be an interesting video to dive into, what worked for them and what you could take away generally from watching the playoffs this year and how that might translate both to college basketball and the NBA draft. A lot of guys that we're talking about here in the coming days will be picked in the draft. We've been talking about them for months and how they translate. I think it is a useful exercise. I think sometimes you spend so much time diving into the numbers and things like this of how does this guy fit? And then you watch like an NBA game that night. And you're like, oh, like this, I don't see this guy actually doing this in the NBA. It's like, it's hard to envision this guy actually doing the thing we're thinking about on paper. So different video for us, but I'm hopeful it'll be interesting for you guys. And yeah, Fawcett, any thoughts on the Knickerbockers finally pulling it off?
Yeah, so I think just what you're talking about just the trends, we've kind of seen that college basketball has had a little bit of a lag behind the NBA and a lot of trends. Like I think about when drop coverage became very popular in the NBA, and then a couple of years when it really started to get popular with in college. I think about like icing pick and rolls. I think about like Tom Thibodeau with his like scratchy voice, like screaming ice. And then like a couple of years later, it gets very popular in college basketball. 5 out, same kind of thing. And it's always just interesting to think about those types of trends. This like small ball in the NBA that kind of tied in with the 5 out that like led to some teams really wanting to play small ball in college. Now, of course, the college game has changed, but it's really interesting. I mean, you mentioned that you might not watch a ton of regular season NBA. I would be kind of in the same boat. My media diet of basketball is really like college basketball, Europe, and then maybe a couple steps below is NBA regular season. But I understand that even while a lot of coaches are looking to Europe for trends and what might be coming next, still most of them are looking at the NBA. And that's something that players are looking at the NBA. As much as I wish that players were tapping into, Besiktas versus Fenerbahce in the Turkish finals right now, they're not. They're watching NBA. So I always think that when players kind of aspire to be at that level and they watch a lot of NBA, and still I think a lot more coaches are looking towards the NBA than Europe, as much as a lot of teams are looking at Europe. I think it's always really interesting to look at what could be coming, and that also my last kind of points on this, and maybe it leads in before we get into the film, but something that I also find kind of interesting was we came off this like about a decade ago, we were very much in the super team era, where we had the runs of course Golden State and how they've really changed how teams played because they won a number of championships, and there was a number of championships won by LeBron's teams, and there was conversations on how to build a roster. Well, now we're in a situation where it's I think 8 different champions in 8 years, and that's kind of changed. And it's also interesting because when the Warriors were winning all their championships, it was very easy to say like, well, this is how the rosters are, but like, yeah, there's some changes, but like generally speaking, they were built in a certain way and they played a very particular style. Now we have seen a lot more different teams winning and maybe winning in different styles. So it's probably a little bit more challenging to see those trends. Like we don't have the one team that's won 3 and 4 to be like, okay, well, like this is winning basketball in the NBA. So yeah, I'm just kind of curious what you think about that parity and what teams kind of might aspire to at the college level. And also, I mean, we've got two very different very, very different markets between a salary cap league and what we're dealing with in college basketball. So we saw the run there where UConn went back to back and was very much in the mix to maybe get a couple more close by. But I'm curious if you think that if you were to say like the next 8 years of college basketball, do you expect 8 different champions, or is that number lower to you?
That's a good question. Because I do think the NBA has become, you're much more fragile now because of the CBA. It's become a lot harder to maintain these really excellent teams. And then even if you do everything right, and you keep your team together, injuries can derail you. You could just get beat. Oklahoma City they were banged up and just got beat by a good Spurs team. And those teams I think will win a championship at some point again. But yeah, it's very easy to say you'll be back and you'll have chances. And I think in some ways the NBA has moved a little bit more towards a college model where it's going to look different almost every single season in terms of just, what your roster looks like. You're going to have to continue to evolve and adapt. Doesn't mean necessarily, again, that doesn't mean that you can't build a dynasty. And obviously in college, you have the benefit of just, the players are free agents every year right now, right? So you have the benefit of, okay, so Michigan wins the championship, they can go reload in a way that it's harder to do in the NBA, but not impossible. So yeah, it's an interesting question, and I do think kind of sets the tone. Roster building would be on a whole different video. What can college teams learn from the NBA, and maybe what NBA teams could learn from college? But we wanted to focus kind of more on the X's and O's and the way the game is going. And I think the probably most obvious thing, that we probably needed to talk about off the top was the physicality of these games, of these playoffs. I mean, it's jarring to watch, just like thinking about the NBA games that I grew up watching 10 years ago. Or didn't grow up, I guess I was like a late teenager at that point. But you think about like the Warriors dynasty and the series between like the Cavs and the Warriors and things like that. Like, it's almost unrecognizable the way the game has changed in terms of the importance of just like being able to bully people, pure physical strength being a skill. We talked about that in college being undervalued. I think it's certainly undervalued in the NBA right now, of just guys who can, guys who can bang, quite frankly, like can be physical, can be tough, can play bigger than their size. Josh Hart, a great example of that. But man, these playoffs were just unbelievably physical. And I thought the Knicks, as much as anyone, kind of brought the fight, which was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and I feel like there's kind of two pieces when people talk about physicality. There's the one piece where it's just like Wemby throwing elbows and some of that stuff. And like, to me, that's not really physicality, but there still is a lot of legal physicality. And this is something that when I watched the NBA game versus the college game, and I almost wanted to like do this little segment as a bit of my own like PSA to like college fans and just like kind of complaining, oh, why do they call so many fouls in college basketball? And then you watch a finals like this, but like watch how much physicality there is like with the chest. And like that's something you'll hear coaches talk about a lot, about like how you can foul a guy with your chest. That is something that often you'll hear coaches talk about. And when you see the level of physicality in these games, a lot of it is times where it's like, oh wow, that was a lot of physicality on that drive, but it was with kind of the chest and shoulders and not the hands. There's not a lot of grabbing, and there's a lot of kind of elements of this where I feel like if college teams could play a little bit more physically with their chest, but get away from the grabbing is going to get called all the time. And when people complain about how many fouls there are in the college game, a lot of it is related to stuff where guys are grabbing and holding. And I just feel like that's always got to be a way about the how the game is officiated. So I watched the play like this and how good the Knicks were at walling up and playing with their chest. And like, were they fouling guys with their chest? Like, yeah, there was times where guys were leaving their feet for layup and they were getting ridden out in ways that should be a foul, but they weren't. And that's the kind of just like legal fouling, like legal physicality that really kind of struck me about this series, and something that I do think so many teams could get so good at in college. And then the other thing I think they do at such a high level in the NBA, I see it with G League guys that I coach in the Canadian Elite Basketball League, is how physical they are, but on players without the ball that are getting into actions, whether it be guys coming together in split cuts or whether it be someone that goes into is kind of rising up to set a ball screen, how good they are at rerouting that guy and steering them so that they can't set a ball screen exactly where they want. Or if someone is going to go set a pin down, rerouting that guy and being physical with him so he can't set that pin down exactly where he wants to. And just these kind of areas of legal physicality, I do think that college teams could get a lot better at. And there's some teams that are utilizing different elements there. But I think when you watch a lot of these plays and a lot of these like really physical plays on the rim, like a lot of them don't look like college fouls, because again, you're still seeing a lot more fouling with the chest, for lack of a better term. I know it's the term I keep going to, but it's what I always think about watching this. So Could you get guys that are smart and savvy enough to do that at 18, 19, 20, 21? Yeah, I mean, it might be a little bit of a challenge, but if we're looking at like what are the lessons of physicality from what we just saw, I thought that would be kind of my takeaway.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's interesting, and it's to make a kind of parallel to college. You and I have talked a lot about like the days of just sitting and being super conservative defensively and being elite on that end of the floor are probably over in college basketball, and the like true scramble type teams, the Houstons of the world, have taken over. And I don't think it's feasible to play that type of scramble game in the NBA. In fact, I think you felt that like when teams would force the ball out of Brunson's hands in particular, the way the Knicks could just spray it around and make threes, I think was real. But I think the counterbalance to that is the physicality off the ball, as you alluded to. Like you can't blow up actions in the NBA by blitzing in the same way that you would blitz a college team and just like force 20% turnover rates just by like throwing two bodies at the ball. Like it won't work. Teams will figure it out. But you can be very disruptive of letting a team get into actions, especially in a 24-second shot clock, just by like physically not allowing a guy to go screen, physically not allowing a guy to get to where they want to go. And the NBA referees have essentially said that that's allowed right now. How long that will last, I don't know. But for now, and I'm curious how Adam Silver wants to shift things. I do think it kind of went to a new level in this finals and these playoffs. But I do think for now, at least, there is like a very real factor of like, if they're going to let us throw bodies around and not allow you to get into actions that way, that might be our best way to slow down some of these absolute superstars. So I thought that was definitely a takeaway, a learning for me of like how our teams finding ways to defend these incredible offensive talents. You certainly saw a lot of physicality as well on the backboards, and you saw the Knicks in particular, I think, really benefit on the offensive glass. We talked about it in a college context, how important stealing those extra possessions is, how much it changes kind of the calculus of your offense and what shots are good shots if you can crash and be super effective. And the Knicks, particularly with some of their guards, I thought just got back-breaking rebound after back-breaking rebound throughout this series and throughout this playoffs. And some of that was just hustle. I think some of that's real strategy too, though. And we talked about offensive rebound being something that you have to strategize, and it's not just let's just fly at the backboard and hope we go win the battle. That's a good way to get burned in transition, particularly in the NBA.
Yeah, so that's really interesting because for so long in the NBA, the offensive rebounding rates were so much lower than in college basketball, so much lower than in Europe, because people were so scared to send players to the glass. And there was different theories for it. Could you get stars on max contracts to get on the offensive glass was something you often heard. You can argue what extent that plays. But one of the big pieces was like, if you send guys to the offensive glass, you're going to get killed in transition defense. So NBA teams, a lot of them just punted on offensive rebounds and just got back in transition defense. And we're seeing in college where offensive rebounding is at a super high level. College basketball is still like the highest offensive rebound rate. When you look at, NBA, Europe, college is way ahead in terms of offensive rebound rate. And so much of what we've talked about on our show and what so many teams are dealing with is how do we both offensive rebound, but also set our transition defense the moment that the shot goes up. So a lot of teams are handling that by going to maybe they're going to always rebound on the top side. So at least if they don't get the rebound, they're on the right side of the mat. The extreme example of that being the tagging up, which we've talked about. And something you always see teams talking about is like, okay, well, however we're offensive rebounding, who is the safety? Who's getting back? Now, Kevin, if you bring in the film here, if you watch what the Knicks did, they're not doing any of that. They're doing all the stuff that a lot of teams would say we are never doing. A lot of teams never want to crash for offensive rebounds from the baseline because they're scared that if they do that and they don't get the ball, then they don't have numbers in transition defense. The Knicks were like, go get the ball. If you have to run the baseline and you get on the wrong side of your defender, no problem. And also, again, talking about like always making sure you have a safety back. Watch how many times the person who would prototypically be the safety just goes and sprints into the paint. And like this example right there, someone who might go be the safety, and Josh Hart's just like, I'm going to go get a piece of the ball. Like it just seems like they have punted on transition defense and just said like, hey, we got to go try to make a play. Yeah, there's times that guys realize that they are not going to be in offense rebounding position and they start to head back. But like generally speaking here, I think a lot of college coaches would look at these offensive rebound clips and be like, oh my God, this is horrible. This is bad rebounding. This is bad transition defense. And like, is there something to be said about just causing chaos? That's kind of one of the things I think about, and is just going all out to try to get the offense rebound and just saying like, hey, we will put, I guess, kind of maybe Houston being the close example, Cougars, not talking NBA in this setting, just being like, hey, we are going to put pressure on, if everyone flies to the glass, the defense or rebounding team is not even going to be organized enough to go and attack us in transition. But it is just like so funny to see how many typical offensive rebounding / transition defense rules are being broken by the Knicks. And it was just super effective for them. So I am curious, in our world of everyone in college right now and in Europe, you know, and the NBA, everyone talking about like tagging up, setting your transition defense immediately, and taking a little bit away from the offensive rebounding. The Knicks just did something that was like this, that looked like what college basketball teams were doing 7 or 8 years ago, and just sending guys to the glass and be like, hey, go make a play. And that is going to be one that I'm really curious if a lot of coaches who are spending so much time on their transition defense are like, nah, screw it. Let's like just go send guys and try to get the ball. And then I think like you mentioned, especially if you have guards who can do that. Well, a lot of guards on the defensive end are not really used to boxing out guards. So if you've got someone like that who really has a nose for the ball and can go get it, like, is that a guy you really try to weaponize with offensive rebounding? But I will say, going through those clips when I was putting together for this video, I was kind of stunned at how many kind of conventional rules would be broken in terms of favor of like, we are trying to get as many second shots as we can.
Yeah, there's no question. It's a fascinating conversation. I think it contributes again. I think when you think about how the Knicks were able to do this, and obviously we'll talk about Brunson and we'll talk about their offense and how good it was. And I just think at the end of the day, like, they were the type of team that was very uncomfortable to play against, because you just felt constantly under siege, right? They were constantly looking to break out and steal buckets in transition, be opportunistic there. They were constantly looking to crash the offensive glass and be opportunistic there. Often, you know, when defensively, you're just scrambled constantly against them because they're spraying it around. They're so unselfish to keeping the ball moving. It's getting from side to side. And then, oh, man, you do everything right. Well, here comes Jalen Brunson. And Jalen Brunson, you're just absolutely phenomenal. A lot of fun to watch, and had the ability to create shots in difficult situations and make tough ones in a way that, you know, very few guys in the NBA have. Take it over a series in a way that very few guys have. And it's funny because I do think the narrative around the NBA and certainly around the draft in the last couple of years has really swung heavily against quote unquote small guards. Oh, you know, if these undersized guys are hard to build around. You see some of the, you know, failings, you know, the Trae Youngs of the world that have had success, had incredible numbers, and still kind of end up as an underwater contract when it's all said and done. And just as I think there was approaching consensus of like, you just can't build this way, here comes, as small a guard as you'll find in the NBA, Jalen Brunson just dominate a series. And I am sort of the belief that it may, I'm seeing takes about like, oh, well, does this mean you can draft Darius Acuff? And I'm like, if you draft Darius Acuff because of Jalen Brunson, you are going to be disappointed. I think Darius Acuff's an awesome prospect. I don't think you can make any decision about your draft based on Jalen Brunson, because Jalen Brunson wasn't Jalen Brunson coming out. It's just incredibly difficult to ask what they're doing. You know, it's just so difficult. So to me, I would be sort of the belief that Brunson is a unicorn, but I'm curious your thoughts and what made him so special in this series.
Yeah, so I don't know if what I'm about to say is going to make sense, so you can check me after. But when people talk about small guards, I really think small guard is like a style of play. And when you look at a lot of the small guards that have worked out, haven't worked out. But if you're talking about like when people debate small guards, it's usually guys that are short in stature and they're very fast and they play that style of like jitterbug, running around, get downhill, finish at the paint at the college level. But, you know, are they going to do the NBA level? And they really heavily rely on step backs and like, are they going to be able to get that? And then when you watch Jalen Brunson, like really watch Jalen Brunson, not the stature, you watch the style of play he has. And he is like, physicality, he'll back guys down, he'll play in the mid post, but like he doesn't play like a small guard. And that's like both impressive for him, but it's also like, again, if you're going to compare this guy to some of the guards of the past that are 5'11", 6 foot and really rely on speed and quickness, well, that's not his game at all. And when you watch a lot of these plays and go back, like he's not burdened by anyone. He's playing a lot of mid post ISO. He's playing a lot of physicality. And it's funny because like when I watch him play, to me, it just like furthers the idea that like the lessons to me about Brunson are that you should be looking for guys who have really high IQ, high feel, and can play with physicality. Like that to me are the lessons of Brunson. And that's where you kind of lose me. If someone was trying to make a Trae Young comparison, if someone's trying to make a Darius Acuff comparison, I just like they're different styles. Like he is a guard that is physically small in stature, but he doesn't play like a small guard. And that's not even like, oh, he plays so much big. Like it's just like his style of ISO and physicality is just not the small guard kind of archetype. So yeah, going back to your kind of initial take of like, is Jalen Brunson just awesome? Like, yeah, he kind of is. And like the major strengths for Brunson to me are, it's the IQ, it's the feel, it is shot making, and it's physicality. And I do think you should look at those traits. And if that comes from 5'10" or 6'2" or 6'5", yeah, that's great to me at all those. But no, I do not look at that and say like, oh man, I can't wait for Tyler Tanner to, go in the draft next year. And I love Tyler Tanner and I think he could be a player. It's just like to compare that guy to Brunson's play style. Yeah, they're both small guards who handle the ball, but they couldn't be more different in my opinion. So I would not use Brunson to, I would not use Brunson to defend a lot of different small guard pieces that I've seen a lot of draft people use to defend small guards.
I would also say this, like at the end of the day, the Knicks have done an incredible job of building around a small guard, right? You have three bigger wings, Hart, Bridges, Anunoby, who are all very good defensively, right? That's a huge part of this, is that you're insulating him a little bit on that end of the floor. You have a physical 5 in Robinson that they could bring off the bench and rim protect. You have Towns, who's such a weapon, who opens the floor up for Brunson to, drive it and score out of the mid post and do some of those unorthodox things. Like the Knicks are a team building success story around a unique player, and expecting that to translate. Not to say that Jalen Brunson wouldn't be great in Sacramento, but he wouldn't be Jalen Brunson. Like it wouldn't be the same. And I think that's important to note as well. So I think if you love Darius Acuff, you should love Darius Acuff because he's Darius Acuff, not because he could potentially be Jalen Brunson. To me, it's too different. And then last thing, I think we want to talk kind of about their offense generally and the success they had. I thought it was super fun to watch. Again, the way they shared it, how unselfish they were, how they could scramble you, how they'd put Wembanyama in binds. He's such an incredible defensive player. Some of these concepts I'm sure we'll see in college. Some of them are probably more specific to the way NBA teams play and the way NBA players and NBA talents are capable of playing. But certainly a credit to Mike Brown and their entire group as to why they were so successful. And I think a lot to learn kind of throughout the league and then throughout college as well about the way that the Knicks shared the basketball. I think that was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and I do think watching them, they don't do anything that's super unique for the for the NBA level, but it is something that, again, you see so much at the NBA level that you don't as much see in college, and some teams utilize this a little bit, but with the NBA having such a short shot clock and how they have to constantly re-trigger, like watch all these plays where when they need to get something in secondary offense, how they go to guard screening. And of course, in college basketball and still a lot of levels, so much you see initiated by a 5 setting a ball screen for the 1, or maybe the 4 who's going to be popping. But especially in kind of the second half of shot clocks, you saw the Knicks often going to like, okay, we're neutral. What are our neutral triggers? Okay, we want to get into a guard to guard screen. And because of that, they're also able to keep those 5s in the dunker spot at all times, manipulate where help defenders are coming from. And you talked about how they were able to kind of utilize these really good guards because of the 5s they had in the rotation. They just allowed those guys to not be involved in ball screens. And if the Spurs were trying to trap, like you mentioned, they did utilize a lot more like college-y type, more novelty gimmick offense of trying to get the ball of Jalen Brunson's hands. Well, they made sure that by really spacing the floor and going guard to guard, there was kind of a clear kind of pressure release that kept the ball out of guys guys like the fives who maybe you don't want to be playmakers, or the defense would much rather be playmakers. And I do just see all this like guard to guard screening in the NBA, and the Knicks did it a ton, as we are seeing in a lot of these clips. And yeah, still in college, like the screen game is still a lot of five setting it for one. And when it comes to late clock, what do you often see? Point guards dribbling it out, and they're calling for the five to come get them. Maybe they try to get a switch and work one-on-one with the five. And for the Knicks, it was very often guard to guard, guard to guard, guard to guard. They just keep running through. Do you ghost it? Do you actually set it? All this kind of different stuff. And I thought it was really good. And I do think this is something that this wasn't just the Knicks doing this, very common across the NBA. So this isn't like everyone seeing this for the first time. This to me is a bit of a accumulation of like, this is what's been going on in the NBA the last couple of years. And I wonder if just seeing the Knicks do it, everyone sees it a little bit more. If that's something we start to see in college, a lot more of these guard to guard actions, especially kind of late clock. Your first trigger doesn't work. Your first called set. What are our neutral triggers? Like I think you saw the Knicks do some really good stuff out of very simple. Ghost it out, kind of surprise. A lot of people expect the ghost when it's a guard setting it for the guard. So do you just actually go and set that? That was something the Knicks did to confuse teams. So really like, it's not like a major breakthrough. Like that probably wasn't the most stunning thing you've seen on this channel, Sweeney. But like, I think that because it is also so simple and straightforward, like most teams in the country could incorporate this to an extent. And I think a lot of teams would rather kind of win or lose the back end of their offensive possession with their ones and twos, or maybe ones and threes, twos and threes, than getting some of these fives involved. So especially for some of these teams that are much more guard heavy, which is a lot of teams in college basketball, how do you kind of leverage guards a little bit more? I just think, yeah, getting those guys involved in more two-man actions, keeping the bigs out of it. I love bigs. I think they've absolutely got a place, but like, yeah, there's times where, yeah, there's going to be a lot of advantages in guard to guard stuff.
The other thing I think about too is you think about Josh Hart, Bruce Brown a couple years ago with Denver. I think you know it's a little bit different flavor with Alex Caruso with the Thunder, but like there has become this like real role in the NBA for this like physical sort of like in college. This is like an undersized power forward. In the NBA, it's really more of like a wing that's able to play a little bit more effectively, despite not being a great shooter, because the bigs all shoot in the NBA or more bigs shoot in the NBA. Like there's so many like awesome college players in that sort of archetype that I think get like hilariously underused by offenses because coaches aren't creative enough to find ways to involve them in offense. And like, they just get dorked over and over again. And I will say it's very challenging because those guys are all awesome thinkers, and not every, undersized bully four-man in college basketball can like process the game at a very high level. And obviously like Andre Jackson is like the ultimate example of this for UConn. Like UConn unlocked so much a few years ago playing through Andre in a sense, because they realized they couldn't just stick him in a corner, and not everyone is smart enough to be Andre Jackson. But man, like if I was a college basketball team, there are these like weird kind of these guys that get turned into blend wings that are really like point guards that can't shoot with size. And I would be absolutely like, if I was a college coach right now, I think that's like a weird undertapped market of player that you could take and pair them with like a dynamic shot creator that gets blitzed and hedged and really use a lot of these like guard to guard screens and allow these guys to make plays going downhill against advantages, because like it's an undervalued asset. Like these guys that can think at a super high level, even if they aren't great shooters. And I think you've seen the Harts and the Browns, et cetera, of the world become indispensable NBA players despite their weaknesses. And I think you could see more of that in college.
Yeah, I think just watching the sport at its highest level here for the finals, I think when talking about the differences between NBA and college, like it's often the first thing that a lot of people say is the shot making. And like, yeah, obviously like shot making's pretty high level. The size and athleticism, like, yeah, that's pretty noticeable. But I do think the biggest thing to me, even just watching all these clips again, is the processing speed of these players between the NBA and college is so drastic. And that really is where I think that teams are starting to realize that a little bit more, where it even with the draft coming up, if we took it to just a quick close with a little bit of draft talk, vaguely, is just teams figuring out that like your athleticism and explosiveness is not really your ceiling. Oftentimes it's your processing ability. And I feel like the athleticism and size is a little bit more of your floor. And I do think when you're talking about guys like Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson, and again, we can even talk about some of these players on the Spurs who also got to a very high level in the sport. Like a lot of them we're not the most athletic, the most explosive, the best physical tools, but I just feel like everyone on the floor for both teams was able to process at a really high level on both sides of the floor. And I continue to think that that's going to be a differentiator for a lot of players. And even at the top of the sport, or the top of the draft, I should say, it would be really interesting to know how teams would evaluate, even when looking at the top players in this draft, who do they think is going to be the best processor, how they go about evaluating that, whether through what they watch on film. Not as much workouts. Those guys at the top of the sport don't have to do that too much in the draft, but evaluating decision making and processing speed is something that I think is massive. And as we also see teams in college that are trying to recruit a little bit smarter, whether it be high school, international, transfer portal, finding these guys that can process quickly, like, man, that was something that was really reinforced to me watching these NBA finals.
Yeah, there's a lot more highly successful cognitive outliers than physical outliers, I think, in the NBA. And I think it's true in college too. Like, the guys that overachieve are the thinkers. They're not the, oh man, this guy jumps out of the gym and he can run and he can do this. Like, the guys that overachieve their recruiting ranking are the guys that people underestimated the impact of how smart they were, and how much of a winner they were, how they, added value to other players without the ball in their hands. Like, all those things I think always pop up this time of year, but probably need to be talked about more because they're huge. So this was fun. I'm intrigued to see if the Knicks can do it again. I think it'll be difficult. I think the Spurs are obviously coming, not going anywhere. Dylan Harper's awesome. He's fun to watch. I will say, all the tweets like, how did Rutgers miss the NCAA tournament with Dylan Harper? It's like, I see you're new here. We haven't done the Markel Fultz or the Anthony Edwards or a number of guys. This has happened before. It'll happen again. And Rutgers had a very bad roster around them. There will not be a lot of Zach Martini and Tyson Acuff film being shown on Scout Team anytime soon. That was not a fun basketball game to watch. So, it's new, it's unique. Spurs aren't going anywhere. Thunder aren't going anywhere. But cool for the Knicks to win it. And we'll see. We'll see who's next. We've got more coming on Scout Team all off season long. Please check us out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the website, Basket Under Review. Tons of fun, tons of great content. Enjoy the off season, and please, as always, chime in on the Discord or on Twitter or in the comments on YouTube if you have a video idea you really want us to tackle, concepts we can talk about. There's very few limitations on what we can pull off on this channel with enough work and thought ahead of time. So we're excited about it. We can't wait for the off season to end, but we've got a long way to go, and let's keep pounding. Appreciate y'all watching.